J'ai été forcé de m'asseoir seul au mariage de ma sœur, puis un inconnu m'a murmuré, fais comme si tu étais avec moi. La mâchoire de ma sœur est tombée. My sister Leah made absolutely sur everyone at her wedding knew he was the pathetic single one of the family. She sat me at what he liked to call the leftover table, introduced me as the one who was still looking for someone, and even made sur her bridesmaid whispered about my sad love life like it was part of the entertainment. But when a stranger leaned toward me and whispered, pretend you're with me, that little act turned her perfect day into the sweetest revenge he could have imagined. If you've ever been humiliated by family members who think being single somehow makes you less than a real person, hit that like button. And subscribe if you believe karma always show up in the most unexpected way because trust me, this story prove that some team revenge doesn't come with Angers, but with indeniable jalousie. The reception always glowing golden lights, crystal chandelier, champagne bubbling in every glass. But all he could see was the number printed on my placard, table 12. The singles et table. The reject corner. The spot Leah had so strategically chosen just to remind everyone that her old sister was still very much alone. My name is Jeanne, and I guess I should start by explaining how I ended up being the family disappointment at my own sister's wedding. Leah and I were never close, not even a kiss bu over the last year, our rivalry had turned downright toxic. Ever since she got engaged to Remy, a wealthy banker from a high-end family, she'd made it her personal mission to remind me that he was 32, still single, and apparently running out of time. Maybe you should try those dating apps again, she'd say at family dinner, with that fake concern dripping from her voice. You can't be picky forever, Jeanne. Time's ticking, you know. Her mom, Sophie, would tilt her head in pity, while her dad, Mark, would awkwardly change the subject but Leah never stopped. She seemed to take actual pleasure in my love life as failure, like my loneliness somehow confirmed her own happiness. The morning of her wedding, she called me with what she described as sisterly advice. Jeanne, my dear, she began, her voice oozing with condescension, I know today might be hard for you seeing everyone so happy and in love. Just try not to look too sad in the photo, okay? And please, don't spend the whole evening talking to the bartender like you did at Justine's wedding. That should have been my first warning of what was coming. When he arrived at the reception at Le Grand Manoir wearing the navy blue dress he'd spent weeks picking out her maid of honor, Manon, walked up to me holding a clipboard and smiling the way people do when they're about to deliver bad news. Oh, Jeanne, let me show you your table, she said in that same syrupy tone Leah had mastered. Table 12 was tucked away in the far corner, right next to the kitchen doors, where servers rushed in and out carrying tray of food. My tablemat? A few of Leah's co-workers who barely acknowledged me, and great aunt Janine, who spent the evening complaining about the music volume and suggesting I lower my standard. But the real humiliation came during the introduction. The room was full, the air buzzing with laughter and clanking glass, when Leah decided it was time to parade me around like a child at show and tell. She grabbed my arm and dragged me toward a cluster of Remy's relative polished, elegant people who looked like they belonged in a magazine. And this is my sister Jeanne, Leah announced, looping her arm around Remy's shoulder as if marking her territory. Our little carry woman always so focused on work instead of finding someone special. They smiled politely while he stood there, it creeping up my neck. Remy's aunt, Madame Dubois, gave me a pitying look and patted my arm with a perfectly manicured hand. Oh dear, don't worry, she said keenly. There's someone for everyone. Have you tried church group? My nephew Guillaume met his wife at a prayer circle. Leah logged not a warm log, but the kind that feeds off someone else's discomfort. Jeanne's very independent, aren't you, dear? She added, saying independent like it was a disease. He tried to smile. I just haven't found the right person yet, he said, trying to keep my voice steady. Well, you can't wait forever, she made in Remy's mother, Madame Moreau. My doctor waited too long, and now she's 45 with fertility problem. Don't make the same mistake. For the next hour, he endured a parade of unsolicited advice from Leah's friends and in-laws, each one offering their personal wisdom on how he might finally find someone. It felt almost rehearsed, like Leah had briefed them on exactly how to make me feel small. Joseph, one of Remy's business partners, told me he should lower my expectation. Christophe, another guest, shared a story about his aunt who found love at 50 who is a widower and sick is, if that was supposed to inspire me. Even the photographer seemed in on the joke, during family photo, he kept asking if he wanted a +1, then looked genuinely confused when he said no. The breaking point came during the bouquet toss. All the single ladies, come on up, the DJ shouted, his voice full of forced excitement. He tried to hide behind a marble pillar, but Manon spotted me and dragged me forward. Come on, Jeanne. This could be your lucky night. He ended up surrounded by a group of 20 summiting Rémi's cousin logging and skilling Aléa prepared to throw her bouquet. Standing among them, he felt painfully aware of my age, my status, my nerve. Léa cocked my eye, smirked, and deliberately tossed the bouquet in the opposite direction. A bubbly 24-year-old named Chloe cocked it, and the room erupted in cheer. Léa rapped her in a hugend, loud enough for everyone to hear, said, "Look like Jeanne is gonna have to wait a little longer." The laughter that followed made my skin crawl. He cocked the look that mix of pity and relief people were when someone else becomes the evening's entertainment. He slipped back to my table, swallowing tears of anger and humiliation. It was supposed to be a celebration of love, a night of joy, laughter, and champagne toast, but somehow Léa managed to turn it into a public execution of my self-esteem. For a moment, he seriously thought about slipping out before anyone noticed. He didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. He'd just grabbed my purse when a low, calm voice spoke from behind me. "Pretend you're with me." He turned, startled, and saw a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal grey suit. He was tall made seafood too with dark hair and the kind of key confidence that made people notice him the second he walked into a room. His eyes were kind, but steady, and there was something magnetic about the way he carried himself. "Excuse me," he whispered. "Your sister has been telling my partner for the last 10 minutes how worried she is about you being all alone," he said, sliding smoothly into the seat beside me. "I'm guessing you didn't ask her to share your personal life with half the room." He wasn't wrong. Across the hall, he could see Léa gesturing toward me as she spoke to a cluster of Rémi's colleagues, probably spinning some story about poor Jeanne, doomed to die alone. "That doesn't bother you, does it?" he asked. To be stone made it sound less like a question and more like they already decided we were in this together. He shook my head, too surprised to speak. For the first time that night, he didn't feel invisible. "I'm Guillaume," he said, offering me a warm smile. "Rémi's cousin from Paris. And you must be Jeanne, the sister who apparently need to be rescued from eternal singlehood." Despite myself, he looked. "That is me, the family's charity cause." "Well, not anymore," he said, flashing a grin that was equal par kind and mischievous. Guillaume draped an arm casually over the back of my chair and leaned in to talk, as if we'd known each other for years. Within seconds, he noticed her turning. Across the room, Léa glanced over mid-conversation with the wedding planner and then froze. Her perfect breed smile flickered for just a second before she excused herself and marched toward us, her gown trailing behind her like armor. "Jeanne," she called out, her voice a pitch higher than usual. "I didn't realize you knew Guillaume." "All friends," Guillaume said smoothly, his hand brushing me on the table. "We lost touch for a while, but, you know, life happens." Léa's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, her perfect composure cracking just enough to reveal her confusion. "Really? Jeanne never mentioned you," she said. "I like to keep my private life to myself," he replied, finally finding both my voice and a spark of confidence. "You know how I am about work-life balance." The irony wasn't lost on me. Léa had spent the entire evening broadcasting my non-existent love life, and now she was fishing for details about a relationship that didn't exist. "How wonderful," Léa said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So, how long have you two been together?" "Quite a while," Guillaume said, his expression giving away absolutely nothing, and yet, everything at the same time. When she finally walked away, clearly annoyed by her lack of answer, Guillaume leaned closer and murmured, "She looked like she just bit into a lemon." He couldn't help but smile. "She's not used to being out of the loop, especially when it comes to me. She always has to be the star." "Well," he said with an easy grin, "let's keep her guessing." For the next hour, Guillaume played the part flawlessly. He brought me drink from the bar, looked at my stories, and brushed his hand against mine just enough to make our little act look believable. But it went beyond that and actually listened. He asked about my job in marketing, my love for hiking, my recent trip to Brittany. Somewhere between song, he looked at me and said quietly, "You're not what he expected." "What were you expecting?" he asked. "According to your sister, Someone desperate and hopeless," he said without hesitation. He looked. "Instead, you're stuck with someone who just HAS standard." "Good for you," he said, his low-rich and genuine, the kind that loosened something tight in my chest. Across the room, Leah was openly staring now. He could see her whispering to Manon, both of them sneaking glance at us. Remy's relative, the same ones who had pitied me earlier, were now watching with newfound approval, clearly impressed that he'd somehow caught the attention of someone like Guillaume. The revenge was sweeter than he'd imagined, and Guillaume wasn't done yet. When the band started playing slow song, he stood, offered his hand, and said, "Dance with me." It wasn't a question. Out on the dance floor, his hand rested gently on my waist, mine on his shoulder. He could feel every pair of eyes on us, the same people who'd offered me pitying advice just hours earlier. But instead of feeling exposed, he felt safe. Guillaume moved with a natural grace, like he'd taken dance lessons his whole life, and being in his arms felt surprisingly easy. Your sister's watching us, he whispered, his breath brushing against my ear. "I know," he said. "She looked like she's about to explode." Mission accomplished, he murmured, smiling. He looked up at him, this complete stranger who'd somehow made me feel seen, valued, even powerful, and for a moment, he almost forgot it was all pretend. Almost. That when Leah made her move. She appeared busied with Remy at her side, her tone sugary but her eyes sharp. "Mind if I cut in?" she asked. Her husband smiled awkwardly, clearly sensing the tension but not sure why. "Actually, yes," Guillaume said politely, but firmly. We were having a moment. Leah's expression shifted de surprise, irritation, then forced brightness. "Of course," she said, her smile stiff. "I just wanted to say how happy I am that Jan finally found someone." "We were also worried about her." "You were?" Guillaume asked, his voice neutral but his eyes full of spark. "Because from what I've seen tonight, it seemed like you've been more interested in broadcasting her single status than supporting her." The blunt honesty of his word left Leah speechless for once. Remy shifted beside her, uncomfortable, clearly feeling the tension but not understanding where it came from. "We just want what is best for Jan," Leah said finally, her voice trembling as the last of her composure slipped away. "Then maybe try treating her with the respect she deserves instead of turning her love life into party entertainment," Guillaume replied calmly. He had never seen Leah look so rattled. Her flawless bridal pose, that perfect air of superiority, was completely gone. And for the first time that evening, she was the one who looked small. "I don't know what Jan told you," she started defensively. "She didn't have to tell me anything," Guillaume cut in smoothly. "I've got eyes. I saw how you treated her all night." Remy, looking visibly uncomfortable with how public the moment had become, finally spoke up. "Maybe we should let them finish their dance," he said weakly. As the newlywed drifted away, Leah's calm had completely shattered. He could see her whispering frantically to Manon, probably trying to figure out who Guillaume really was and how on earth they managed to attract someone so clearly out of my league. "It feels really good," he admitted softly, how we kept dancing. "We're not done yet," Guillaume said with that same confident smile that sent my pulse racing. For the rest of the night, Guillaume made sure he was never alone. During dinner, he requested that we be moved to a better table, something about his dietary restriction requiring him to be closer to the kitchen. The staff, recognizing him a part of Remy's family, complied without hesitation. Our new seats were right in the middle of the room in full view of everyone. We looked, we talked, we looked like the most natural couple there. Leah's friends, who they ignored me earlier, suddenly wanted to chat. Remy's parents, who had pitied me at the start of the evening, now watched us with curiosity and un level d'admiration. Even Madame Dubois, the same woman who they suggested he try church group, now wanted to know everything about Guillaume's background. When she learned he was a successful tech entrepreneur with an MBA from HEC Paris, her attitude toward me flipped completely. Jeanne, what a lovely surprise, she said warmly. You never mention seeing Someone so accomplished. He smiled politely, trying not to look too smug. But the final act of poetic revenge came during the garter toss. When Remy got ready to toss it to the group of single men, Guillaume stepped forward with absolute confidence. Ouais. Léa called out, panic creeping into her voice. Guillaume, you're not single. He glanced at me, then back at her, with that same infuriatingly calm smile. Actually, he said, I am. Jeanne and I are just taking things slow and getting to know each other again. The garter flew through the air and landed right in his hand. Whether by luck or by Remy SM, ILL never know but the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Tradition said the man who cocked the garter was supposed to place it on the leg of the woman who decocked the bouquet. But Chloé, the bubbly cousin who decocked it earlier, had already left. Look like we need a volonté, the DG announced playfully. Guillaume looked at me, silently asking the question. He nodded. The crowd cheered as I sat down, and Guillaume knelt before me, sliding the garter up my leg with a tenderness that felt far too real for an act. The air between us hummed the kind of tension that makes you forget everyone else exists. For a split second, he couldn't tell if this whole thing was still pretend. Across the room, Léa's expression was priceless, her perfect face frozen somewhere between fury and disbelief as she watched her pathetic single sister become the center of attention, at her own wedding. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, Guillaume walked me to my car. The parking lot was quiet, far from the noise and judgment inside. Thank you, he said softly once we were alone. I know tonight was just an act, but you saved me from one of the most humiliating nights of my life. What makes you think it was just an act, he asked, his tone suddenly serious. My heart skipped. Because you don't even know me. I know enough, he said, stepping closer. I know you're a kind, even when people don't deserve it. I know you're strong enough to handle a night like this without losing your grace. I know you're beautiful inside and out. And I know your sister is a fool for not realizing how lucky she is to have you. Tears welled up, but this time they weren't from embarrassment. I know this started out a rescue mission and went on, but somewhere between that first dance and now, it stopped being pretend. He pulled a business card from his pocket, simple, elegant with his personal number handwritten on the back. If you want to see me again, he said, not for revenge, not to prove anything, just because you want to call me. He took the card with a trembling hand. And if you want to call you tonight. That smile again, the one that had first caught my attention. Then ILL answer. 3 months later, Guillaume and I were officially together. 6 months after that, we moved in together. And exactly 1 year after Léa's wedding, he proposed at the very same hotel where we'd met. Léa's reaction to her engagement announcement was everything he could have hoped for. The sister who had spent years making me feel like being single was a flaw now had to watch me plan a wedding with a man who adored me and who, to her dismay, came from a family even wealthier than Remy's. But the real revenge wasn't proving Léa wrong. It was realizing he no longer needed her approval at all. Guillaume's respect and genuine affection had shown me what he truly deserved and he swore he'd never settle for less again. Our wedding was smaller than Léa's, but infinitely happier. Au lieu d'utiliser l'occasion pour humilier qui que ce soit, nous avons célébré avec des gens qui voulaient sincèrement que nous soyons heureux. Léa a fait un discours en tant que mademoiselle d'honneur, quelque chose qu'elle avait insisté pour faire malgré notre histoire compliquée. Elle a parlé de son bonheur de me voir trouver l'amour. À quel point Guillaume était clairement parfait pour moi. À quel point elle avait toujours su que je trouverais quelqu'un de spécial. La réécriture de l'histoire était à couper le souffle. Mais je m'en fichais désormais. J'avais quelque chose de plus précieux que son approbation. J'avais quelqu'un qui avait vu ma valeur dès le début. Avec le recul, le mariage de Léa a été la pire nuit de ma vie. Sa cruauté m'a montré comment j'avais permis aux gens de me traiter, mais elle m'a aussi conduit à Guillaume. Sans son humiliation, je n'aurais jamais été assez vulnérable pour accepter l'aide d'un étranger. Parfois, les personnes qui nous blessent le plus finissent par nous donner exactement ce dont nous avons besoin pour changer nos vies. Léa voulait me faire sentir insignifiante et pitoyable. Au lieu de cela, elle a créé les circonstances qui m'ont permis de rencontrer mon futur mari. L'ironie est parfaite. En essayant de prouver que j'étais indigne d'amour, elle m'a livré directement à l'amour de ma vie. Si cette histoire vous a rappelé que la meilleure vengeance est de bien vivre, appuyez sur le bouton « J'aime » et abonnez-vous pour plus d'histoires incroyables de karma et d'amour inattendu. La cruauté de quelqu'un s'est-elle déjà retournée contre lui de manière spectaculaire? Partagez votre histoire dans les commentaires. Parfois, l'univers a le sens de l'humour en matière de justice, et parfois cet humour mène au bonheur pour toujours.